Today I want to take a look at how to get a report of all the Power Apps in a tenant. Now this is going to cover both Power Apps Canvas and SharePoint customized list forms. Taking a look at the code that we have, going through a couple different blocks. The first block is going to be installing the modules. These are the commands that we're going to need to be successful. There are three: the Azure AD commands for looking up user objects. There's also the standard Power Apps commands. And then finally, the administration Power Apps commands. After loading all the commandlets that we're going to need, we'll make two connections, one to Power Platform and one to Azure AD. The environments need to be enumerated, and then within each environment, we're going to collect all of the apps. So the environment itself, you might have dev, prod, default environment. Everyone's going to have at least one, but of course you can make your own. The default is that you have a single. And we're also going to declare a memory variable CSV variable here to collect all the details as we're going through the loop. Now, inside of the details of one environment, we want to enumerate all of the apps and then start looping inside each different app. This command right here, the get admin power app, is going to tell us a lot of details about that specific app. It's a rich object. It has some nested properties with multiple values and nested properties under those. Definitely worth hitting a breakpoint and exploring to see the data that's available. It's a very detailed command. On the user information, if the user has left the organization, they might not be found. So we want a little bit of error handling when we try to look up the users created by object ID to get their display name. Power Platform is going to record the GUID number of who the creator was. That GUID number may or may not match with an active account today. So we want to do a little error handling with how that part goes. Coming down here for SharePoint customized list forms, we've got a blog reference out to a third-party site, and that's where I was able to get a little bit of details right down here on the embedded app, site ID, list URL, and list ID. This is what connection it has, that specific Power Apps Canvas is going back to a SharePoint list. Well, what SharePoint list is it? And having the URL would be very helpful for us from a support view. So all of this is going to collect a lot of detail on the apps that are in your tenant, and then finally write it to CSV where you can get a report into Excel. So let's go ahead and give it a test run, and we'll see what our output looks like. So after a brief pop-up window to log in and a few seconds for processing, the script completes and we have an Excel spreadsheet ready. Looking at the Excel CSV, we have a lot of different detail on the applications in our tenant. I like to press Control End to go to the bottom right corner, and then Control Shift Home to select everything. With everything selected, we can do Format as Table, give it a color palette, check the box for my table has headers, and now view the data more clearly. On the far right-hand side, we have GUID numbers and the SharePoint site for where any customized list forms are connected to. So this is really helpful because it gives you that extra visibility into customized list forms that generally we don't have by going through the standard Power Apps menu on the web. When you go to make.powerapps.com, you're going to see Canvas apps. You're going to see a lot of standard items. The customized SharePoint list forms, a little bit harder to find. Typically, you're going to go to the SharePoint list and then click the Customize on the toolbar. But this report gives you visibility across the full tenant. Here we can see dates about when the app was created, about when it was last modified. Working with these sort of dates, we can find things that are maybe stale, dormant, haven't been, used in a while. I mean, if a Power App hasn't been modified in 6 months or a year, maybe that means that people like it and it's stable. It also might mean it's time for a refresh, but we do collect both data points, when it was created and when it was modified. There is an extra Boolean for bypass user consent. This is a helpful flag to keep an eye on for any Power Apps Canvas you're rolling out company-wide for the whole organization. You can toggle this to true, and that will bypass the pop-up window to approve the data connections. Makes the user experience simple, fast, and something I recommend for any large applications you're rolling out to a high number of users. And this gives you a report to make sure that you've turned that on in the correct places. The classification, what level of licensing? Is this standard or premium? Kind of based on the data connections that are inside of that specific app. And here you can see the values, standard and premium, to filter against. Of course, we have display name, we have the app ID GUID number, the environment itself. If you have multiple environments, you're going to see different choices over here from a lifecycle perspective. And really the Power App ID, this GUID number, that's your primary key. That's going to be incredibly helpful to open it up in design mode, to go to the details page. Any of those web-based management screens rely heavily on the GUID number. You can always take this GUID number, paste it into one of the web management screens in order to go and view it quickly. And here we have the Power App address, which is going to include both the environment name and the app ID. And that really creates an experience where you can go directly to the details page to manage the app, make connections to it, and do any updates that are needed. We do have the owner field of who the developer was, and that's good for a point of contact. So in this one report, very easy to run, we can see every PowerApps Canvas application that's on our tenant, all environments, including SharePoint customized list forms with some of the key details that we need for support. The last thing that I wanted to add was coming down here. And when we hit our breakpoint, line 27, we can take the details and add that to the watch window for this specific line where we're getting all the rich data about one given application. So this one's kind of interesting because in hitting a breakpoint, we really want to explore this command, the get admin power app. That's the one that tells us all the details that are possible about a given app. And here you can see on the left-hand side, we have the app name, display name, created, environment. Is it a hero app? Is it a feature app? Not really using those myself. Maybe you guys do. Maybe there's extra detail you want to add to your CSV. Definitely exploring this details variable gives you the ability to add more detail to your report. I mean, the internal property you can see is heavily used on the CSV columns for what level of detail we're collecting. That is where we get the embedded app details for SharePoint. The app location, that it's hosted in the United States, like physical hosting, that might be relevant on a report you're working on. So definitely hit a breakpoint, explore the dollar details variable. There's a lot going on inside of here about tags, maybe the view panel, height, width, number of pixels. Does it have components, unlocked components? There's different version number tracking. The primary form factor web, I think most everything I've worked with is primary form factor web, but maybe you want to come in here and support, some extra properties. Definitely worth exploring. Dollar details is the variable. There's a lot going on here. You can even get background colors and images and, kind of some of the more fine tuning about the app itself. So something to explore. Hit a breakpoint, look at the dollar details. There's a lot going on that's available to us. And then we add those to our report by adding a new line to create a new column. So that covers how to get a report of every Power App in your environment. Thanks for watching.